Alan Wake 2's ending isn't really an ending. Remedy Entertainment, the developer behind one of the best reviewed games of the year, Alan Wake 2, has a whole cinematic universe. Wait, game-o-matic universe, I guess? With games, franchises, and characters overlapping left, right, and center in the Remedy connected universe. And it can be hard to navigate, but fear not, I am here to explain it all, including unraveling the mystery of Alan Wake 2's ending.
What if there's nothing waiting to be revealed? The play of shadows fool us all, subterfuge to get our price of admission. Darkness not as a monster, but as emptiness. We're none the wiser. No answers, no truths. The hero turns to look inside, is destroyed by what he sees, and is redeemed.
As a child, Alan Wake is afraid of the dark. In order to soothe her son's woes, his mother ruins a perfectly good lamp by cutting off the light switch and giving it to Alan as a clicker he can use to banish the darkness, which is a perfectly normal thing to do.
My mom gave me this old light switch. She called it the clicker.
The clicker, huh?
Yeah. If I ever got scared of the dark, I could just flip the switch and a magic light would scare the monsters away.
Oh, sure.
Here it is.
Alan.
Maybe it'll help you too.
Yeah, nice story.
Why did you just have that? Was it sitting on the floor? What? Alan grows up to be a famous writer, mostly based on the popular and pulpy Alex Casey detective series. He appears on late-night talk shows, like writers always do, has his own cardboard standees, like writers always do, and cult-like obsessive fans. Eventually, after a 2-year stretch of writer's block whilst working on his next book, Departure, he goes on vacation to the isolated town of Bright Falls with his wife. Alan is given the keys to the cabin by...
Unfortunately, he was taken ill. But I have the key for you and instructions on how to get to the lake.
Okay.
She'll be important later, and he and his wife head out, only for Alice to reveal that she actually brought him here to see a prominent psychiatrist, which is frankly a terrible thing to surprise your husband with.
He has a private clinic here. He specializes in helping artists. Maybe...
So now you want to get me committed?
No, it's not like that. That's not... Alan? Alan?
Just don't!
Am I the asshole? I tricked my husband into a psych ward because he wasn't making any money. Yes, Alice. Yes, you are. Alan gets understandably upset and storms out. Alice is immediately taken by a supernatural force and pulled into the lake. Jumping into the water after her and waking up many days later, Alan is chased by murderous shadow people called the Taken as he picks up pages of a manuscript he doesn't remember writing. After another encounter with the creepy old lady, Alan is attacked by a tornado like he's being kidnapped by the Wicked Witch of the West, and ends up stranded in the lake. Again. He awakens in Cauldron Lake Lodge under the care of Dr. Emil Hartman, the same person Alice brought him here to see, who tells him he's experiencing a psychotic break and the shadow people were just manifestations of his need to attack himself due to the guilt.
Now, Alan, from past experience with you, I know I need to get right into the heart of the matter as quickly as I can after an episode. Alice drowned, and you couldn't face that. Your mind has constructed an elaborate fantasy scenario in which your writings are affecting reality. She has been kidnapped and supernatural forces of darkness are trying to stop you.
Wake roams the facility, not knowing what's real and what's just in his imagination.
But not for long!
Turns out just wandering around is neither very exciting nor a good gameplay loop, so Alan attempts to escape the darkness, but the lake has other ideas. Alan then discovers Dr. Hartman lied about all of it as a little prank, a little bit of psychologist humor for you. Alan and his pal Barry discover what's really been going down from the other townspeople, and it's not going to do the tourist board of Bright Falls any favors. An entity known as the Dark Presence is trapped in the lake and is attempting to escape by using the lake's power to manifest fictional stories and artwork into reality. It tried before with poet/filmmaker Thomas Zane, remember that name for later, by taking the form of his spouse, Barbara Jagger, who drowned in the lake. Zane was able to resist but was stranded in the lake, and since then, the Dark Presence has grown powerful enough to influence the town and cause all the trouble Alan has come up against. And now it wants to use Alan to escape.
Hey, I
think Alan Wake here has something to say. What's that, Al?
Ooh, I'm Alan Wake. I'm always right about everything. And if I don't get my way, I'll sulk all day long.
Alan and Barry are soon arrested by FBI agent Robert Nightingale, but the Taken attack the police station and take Nightingale away. Sheriff Breaker helps Alan reach Cynthia Weaver, who gives Alan the clicker.
I'd given the clicker to Alice, yet it was here. Zane had written it into existence. I can get to her now. I can finish this.
See, I told you it was relevant. Through the power of Alan's writing, the clicker now has the power to destroy the dark presence. With this new information in hand, Alan returns to Cauldron Lake and dives in, finding himself in a surreal pocket dimension called the Dark Place.
My fear? It's your fear. Why aren't you afraid? You're not Alice. Turn the lights on now. Where's the clicker? What did you do with it?
Alan, honey, you're still 1 foot in a dream.
Where thoughts and ideas shape the reality. Alan defeats Jagger with the clicker.
Someone else to dream me free.
But realizes he must maintain balance within the story. He completes Departure by freeing Alice, but traps himself in her stead, ending on the final line.
It's not a lake. It's an ocean.
In the first DLC, The Signal, Thomas Zane returns in this expansion to the original game and helps Alan defeat an evil version of himself that's consumed by fear and madness. The second DLC, The Writer, continues that thread, and it turns out that the evil Alan, now called the Irrational Alan, is still here. He has to fight shadows of his self-doubt and re-merge his rational and irrational selves, and decides not to let himself fall into such a delusional state again, ending by beginning a new story he can use to try and escape. I sure bet that Alan's never ever going to have an evil doppelganger again, which brings us nicely on to... This is one of the stories Alan writes to try and escape. It's an episode of the in-universe Twilight Zone-esque show, Night Springs, where Alan, the champion of light, has already escaped Cauldron Lake and is chasing his evil double, now named Mr. Scratch, the Herald of Darkness.
The sun's never coming up now. I can keep this up forever. Show yourself. Whatever you say, buddy.
Scratch has Alan trapped in a time loop, hoping he's just gonna give up and let Scratch take over the world. On the third time through this loop, Alan does what he needs to do and finally succeeds in erasing Scratch from existence. Or so he thinks.
They both feel it. He's home at last. Are these actual events, or merely a dream? A memory, or a glimpse of what is to come? One thing is certain. This scene takes place in another time, and another place, far, far away from Night Springs.
After American Nightmare, we have to wait 4 years before Alan Wake returns in Quantum Break. However, in classic Remedy style, this was only via references no one knew were even references until Alan Wake 2 came out. But there's also this teaser video that basically stands as a proof of concept for what Alan Wake 2 would eventually become. The next entry in the Alan Wake series is actually a DLC for Remedy's Control.
My name is Alan Wake.
Which centers around the Federal Bureau of Control, or FBC, which is basically their take on the SCP Foundation. At some point after the events of Alan Wake, the Federal Bureau of Control confiscated the work of Dr. Hartman, who threw himself into the lake and became a Taken, who the FBC promptly captured and took to their New York HQ, the oldest house. During the Hiss outbreak of Control's main story, the Hiss tries to possess Hartman, combining with what the FBC calls the Shadow, and making him a super powerful monster. Bureau Director Jesse Faden then sees visions from Alan Wake, which lead her to the Bright Falls research area and help her defeat Hartman. But Alan reveals that he has been prepping Jesse to help him escape from the dark place.
Things set in motion. If the alarm's true, then so is the reason for the alarm. The effect must follow the cause. It's happening again. A return. You have been warned.
The DLC ends with the FBC receiving an alert from Cauldron Lake, but they note that it's from several years in the future.
Are there agents on site?
Let me check. Agent Estevez is the field agent in charge of monitoring the site, so she should be there to let us know if the situation has been through any major changes recently.
Fast forward to several years in the future, and we arrive in 2023, where a naked man emerges from Cauldron Lake and gets, well, ritualistically murdered. Cue the arrival of FBI detectives Alex Casey and Saga Anderson, who are on the trail of a group of serial killers calling themselves the Cult of the Tree. The naked man is revealed to be Robert Nightingale, the FBI agent who arrested Barry and Alan in the original game. An all-new Sheriff Breaker tries to help our new protagonist, FBI agent Saga Anderson, before rudely vanishing on the spot, after which Nightingale's corpse becomes a Taken and attacks them, which is also very rude.
Show me the clicker.
Saga defeats him and finds Wake on the shores of the lake shortly after. Say that 3 times fast. She takes him to the FBI field office and he tells them how he got out. Alan explains that he was still stuck in the time loop, writing story after story to escape without freeing the dark presence, only to find himself perpetually back at the start each time he finished a story. There's also a mysterious entity called Mr. Door that Tim Breaker, now trapped in the dark place, is researching.
Wait. What's this about aliens?
Oh, I was just convinced that everything going on with me was because of aliens. Now I know it's been Door all along. I haven't ruled out him being an alien, though.
Who keeps having Alan on his talk show and is mentioned by name in Control.
I was in a dark place, and there was a dark man there. His name was Mr. Door, and he told me that there are many worlds. In one world, there was a writer who wrote a story about a cop. In another world, the cop was real. Door said he himself was in all of them at the same time, endlessly shifting between them.
Oh, and is heavily implied, though not 100% confirmed, to be Saga's father.
I need to get to her. She's in danger.
She is. Because of you. And so is someone important to me, someone you pulled into this.
But it's unclear what his goal is or how he fits into the Remedy universe canon just yet. This time the Dark Place is manifesting as a twisted version of New York, and we quickly learn that Scratch's supposed erasure from reality in American Nightmare didn't take. Alan is forced to kill Thomas, who's gone insane in the Zane.
I told you not to try anything!
And Wake writes a novel called Return that would let him escape from the Dark Place, only for Scratch to re-edit it into a horror story that is now manifesting in the real world. Back at the police station, Alan explains to Saga and Alex that Scratch needs the clicker in order to free the dark presence completely, but the clicker can also be used to finally defeat it. Saga discovers that Alan's story, Return, has made it so that her daughter died a few years ago by drowning in the lake, giving her a major motivation to stop this whole mess. Saga recovers the clicker, but just before she can get it to Alan, agents from the FBC descend upon Bright Falls, led by Agent Estevez, who apprehends Alan and takes him in. Out of options, Saga canvasses the town and is led to Tor and Odin Anderson, who can tell her more about the clicker. Tor and Odin explain that the clicker doesn't actually do anything by itself, but amplifies the creative power of those who wield it.
It's Tom's story we're dealing with, so he's gotta be the one to rewrite it. After that's done, he can flick that switch to bring the whole thing home, baby.
I can't use the clicker without Wake. Tom. Meaning Wake.
Saga goes back to the Bright Falls police station to get the clicker to Alan, but plot twist! The Alan who escaped Cauldron Lake is actually Mr. Scratch.
He's a fucking monster, Saga! There it is. We've been waiting for you, motherfucker. I'm gonna fucking destroy you!
Saga fends off Scratch thanks to some fancy FBC tech like some big lights, and makes a plan to get the real Alan out of the dark place, as they still need him to beat this thing. She puts together an elite team of the 4 people she knows, and they put on the biggest talent show this town has ever seen, featuring the old gods of Asgard, Tor and Odin, and the second song in the game that they've written about Alan escaping the dark place. Meanwhile, in the dark place, Alan is still messing around with his little typewriter and is none the wiser. He makes his way to his old apartment in New York and discovers that after he saved her, Alice went home and was tormented every night by visions of Scratch, eventually leading her to take her own life. In a fit of rage at this news, Alan rushes the writer's room and kills someone he believes to be Scratch, but is actually another version of himself from a previous loop that was trying to fix the manuscript for return, perpetuating the loop. Back in reality, the summoning ritual fails to summon Alan to the current time. Both Saga and Alan realize that Alan and Scratch are, in fact, the same person, and always have been.
I had seen this before. This was not Scratch. This was me. Caught in a loop. I had stopped myself trying to fix the manuscript. I was the one haunting Alice. It was always me. I killed her.
Bring Wake back from the dark place with the song and the clicker. But he didn't end up here now. He landed on the shore after I faced Nightingale in the overlap. That night I found Wake here. He appeared because of this. The summoning. That was Wake. Scratch wasn't pretending to be Wake. They're the same person.
Scratch arrives at the summoning site and Saga banishes the dark presence from Alan's body, only for it to possess Alex Casey instead, who takes the clicker and throws Saga into the dark place.
Today, Bright Falls feels a little less bright.
Alan decides that the only way to beat the Dark Presence is to write a completely new ending to Return, and he goes back to the writer's room, helped by Artie, a major character from Control. He tries to write an ending that will save everyone whilst being consistent with the genre and plot beats so far. At the same time, Saga gets help from Alice, who gives her the clicker and a bullet of light. Saga takes those 2 items and escapes to the real world in a mere hour or so, proving to me, once and for all, that Alan probably just isn't a very good writer. Alan uses the clicker to banish the Dark Presence from Casey, the Dark Presence returns to Alan's body, and Saga shoots him with the bullet of light, seemingly killing both of them.
This is how we win. Is it too easy? What if this is still the dark place, another dream to wake up from, always coming back to the beginning? The memory of what came before burned away by this terrible realization. Maybe it's a mercy, forgetting. To know nothing when we loop around, back to...
The game ends with Saga trying to call her daughter Logan to confirm her safety and that the story hasn't completely taken hold of reality. But the scene cuts short before we get to find out the answer. In a post-credit scene, we see a final secret recording left by Alice that reveals she had fully regained some of her memories of what happened to Alan, and she tricked him into thinking she committed suicide. Why are all of her ideas so extreme? Explaining that the only way he can escape the time loop is through ascension. We then see Alan revive from his gunshot wound and say,
"It's not a loop. It's a spiral."
The time loop continues for now, but perhaps the spiral will reach its end in the DLC. It's not out yet, but from the details we have, it looks like the first expansion will be an anthology of alternate timeline stories about Alan Wake characters, and the second will tie closely into the upcoming Control 2.
Wake had to escape, right? His escape. Wake needed a hero. A hero needed a crisis.
So, to recap, Alan is still stuck in the dark place, but Alice is trying to help him reach ascension. Saga is still unsure what is real and what isn't, and the FBC is definitely going to have something to say to the two people who just changed the whole of reality by going for a swim in Cauldron Lake.
A door that stands between two rooms is in both. A door that can lead anywhere is everywhere. That door is the center. He governs the currents of reality.
Right now, though, we don't know what the future holds for the Remedy Connected Universe, but I can't wait to see what it's got in store. If you want more Alan Wake 2, be sure to check out our video with the game's director, breaking down the best scene in the game, and subscribe to the FGS channel. La 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 la.